besides anything that we have done, I appreciate it because you saved a life, and you did not hesitate to do so. No, thank you very much for that very moving story, to which I was involved, because I initiated the trip that he went, and he came back, and he was very thankful for the services that you gave, but also what we did. He was very clear, and I think it's still clear even now, that we saved his life. He was really going. I think life, as we said earlier, is a rather complex thing, because if you take that trip, you would think after the trip and everything, there was very little thing that could separate you from him or whatever. But as you say, we haven't talked since, after that, of course, we did talk, but it has been a bit time. But that was one of the most important thing that, besides anything that we have done, I appreciate it because you saved a life, and you did not hesitate to do so. There are few things in life that demonstrates the real human being of a person that you know. And I think that was one of the operations you undertook, which for me, it indicated what type of a human being you were. And I think he would also be grateful for a long time, I think, no matter what else might have come in between. So it is a moving story, a story that one day, just besides talking about it, one day should be put on record so that people should know. Those who always say, what is this guy doing, etc. They don't know behind what goes on. As well as your partners at the time, who also were part of the help insofar as flying and going there. But they have been what you call
a Gupta plane, as it's called, and a Gupta helicopter. A Gupta plane, as they call it, and a Gupta plane and a Gupta helicopter, as they call it.
Exactly. That's very true. But thank you very much for that. I think it is quite important. I think we could leave it there for now.
Sure.
But it is a moving story indeed, for you to have done what you did under different circumstances. Really very risky issue, but we did it. And I was saying, yeah, this young man does have my heart, because I always want to help, and that help was saving life, and indeed it saved life, because otherwise he was gone. He said so himself when he came back, and I think he was telling people how much we saved his life. But he's still there. We are also still there. So life moves, so to speak. So, but thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and if I ever had to do it again exactly that way, regardless of how things would have turned out, I'll definitely do so with pleasure. Because a lot of people after Nazareth were like, why did you save this guy? Look what he did, because that's part of the conspiracy of Nazareth and how it turned out. His good name pops up, and I say, that's my engagement and my relationship that I had with the current deputy president was not based or forged on politics. I believe it was on a personal liking that at least I had for him, and that's just what it is. So wherever he is, whatever he's doing, you know, I hope you're doing well. I always call to check up on him, and you know, he must keep doing what he needs to do. You know, this is life.
That's fine.
And we love him regardless of how things turn out.
Talking about people saying, "Why did you save this man?" I don't know how many we have confronted after to say, "Why did you save this man?" I said, "This was a comrade. This is a comrade for saving. That's all."
No, he was saving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did not know who poisoned him, why. So here was a comrade going to die. So I thought we should, and I think it's correct, and I'm happy. I'm happy to say, even if that could be repeated, it would still save the life.
Most definitely, the same life, even now. There's no doubt about it. Even now.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. December 2017 was a very interesting period in political history. So my next question is a highly contentious question. I don't think you've commented much on it, but December 2017 was a very interesting period in political history. There was obviously a conference that went down. It was an ANC elective conference. And there were some interesting dynamics that were being spoken about in the public domain. I say public domain, so you know, people mustn't think that we are in the background speaking about stuff that is being hatched up, cooked up. It was in the public domain, the lead up to the elective conference and the election by the party of its leadership. There were some interesting talking points, but I'm gonna leave it to you. What is your take on what happened at Nasrec?
Well, Nazareth, Nazareth was an important year for the ANC. I think it was at a point where the ANC could have picked up itself and move up in terms of its task, in terms of its everything. But also, if that failed, it meant that Nasrec could make the ANC go down. And this is simply because, much as we are all cadres of the ANC, but we know one another very well.
Yes.
That if this particular cadre was to be in the leadership, what will happen, and as well as the other. As it happened, unexpected happened there, because I think there was a very clear direction that the membership was taking. But unfortunately, the issue of money came in the manner that it had never been before, which means, as now evidence has come to the fore, what happened, which means you were either going to move with the ANC and see what happens, or you were beginning to make the ANC to be a kind of a money organization. Now, once the money played its role, it meant that, therefore, the ideological strength of the ANC was being seriously battered, so that you emerge with the kind of ANC that was going to be driven by the money, like a business, or even perhaps worse than a prison. Because that in a sense would have undermined the integrity of the ANC and what it stands for. Because money moves the ANC cadres to a point where it is not the ideological beliefs and principles, but it means those who have the money. And therefore, you are in a sense turning the ANC into a business concern, wherein those who have money are the ones who are going to lead it. Those who don't have the money, they will always be thrown on the sidelines. I think that was the unfortunate result of Nazareth as we know today, because we have got information that even when the information came out, you had the kind of ANC that was not able to act even on that information swiftly to correct things, which tells you, leading up to that place, we were looking at it not from one angle as cadres, that this is an ANC, we want to move forward and implement things, etc. You were talking to people who were saying, this is the ANC I must buy. And once I buy it, it belongs to me. And therefore, people who would have agreed to be bought would find it very difficult after that to stick to principles and other things. So that was an unfortunate kind of Nazareth as we know it today. So, I mean, a few comrades behaved in a very funny way. In a manner that, I mean, one comrade, some comrades were saying, was standing outside saying, where is this money coming? And mentioning people's names so that the money was to go and buy the delegates. So it's not like it only came up later. Some people witnessed, had people, they would tell you the story, what happened. I think the ANC was reaching its very unfortunate kind of level. One can sit back and say why and give all the reasons. I'm sure it will take a long time. Maybe some of us, if we'd still be having fingers, we are going to write at some point to explain these things in some details. But indeed, Nazareth, therefore, left instead of helping us moving forward, but I think it left the scars that would take a long time to heal. So I think that's what we can say about Nazareth. I mean, just to make an example.
Yes.
Here is a president who says to Nazareth, goodbye. But going to Nazareth, having really identified key issues that were ANC issues, to say, therefore, these are the issues to deal with. Things like radical economic transformation, which really the members of the ANC were saying, here we are. The land issue, for an example, those were the issues that were put across at Nazareth. As we enter Nazareth, the issue of free education, for an example, being the kind of issues. These critical and cardinal issues were the issues that the ANC would have said, here is a program to implement. But I think the attitude towards that thereafter will tell you that the ANC was kind of a different thing. People had been intimidated with hunger, that if you don't go this way, you might be a suffering person, etc. But the one for me that takes the cup was when the new leadership of the ANC decided to say the president was left, which I think about 18 months, to run the country. They said, no, it is too late. He must go now. Why? No, he must just go now. There is a mood that is around, you must go now to allow this move. Now, it's the first time the ANC lost the respect of the leadership and began to really recall a president who had done absolutely nothing. I think those were the very serious shots that were fired after the national conference of the ANC. It was clear that here you were faced with a kind of a new situation, as I explained later, that was not looking at the principles, that was not respecting the membership of the ANC, that had elected people, that was not respecting even the decisions of the ANC. Why the ANC thought there should have been a gap between the ANC conference and the national conference of the country, which was done very deliberately so that the new president will have time to grasp and prepare for the elections. So all of that went. So that is what, in brief, I can say with regard to Nazareth. And therefore, Nazareth did not leave us with a happy mood forever. It left us with quite a number of unfortunate things that happened that we know of, as I've just mentioned a few. And therefore, maybe in one sense, it was a big lesson to the ANC, and I hope the ANC has learned the lessons that in the coming elections, we will act differently in terms of maintaining the ANC and its principles.
Okay, so that is your view, as you experienced it, as you saw it, and you elaborated on that period in politics. Now, if from the other side, now if I say to you, okay, Dad, fine, cool, I hear what you're saying, but maybe you're just upset because the direction that you took and the side that you were on, or the horse that you were backing, whatever terminology has been used in politics, did not win. This is just you being upset. It's sour grapes. You're coming up with, or you and your supporters are coming up with conspiracy theories on why a conference and the side that you may have been pushing for lost. What would you say to comments like that? Because those comments are out there, they exist. True or not, they exist.
No, I agree. If somebody said so, it would be somebody who was not in South Africa. I think the fact that money was the biggest which was seen is a reality. It's not a sour grape. It's a reality. That people were bought is no longer just what people saw at the time, is what has come to the fore as evidence. The amount of monies that came out is a reality. It's not a sour grape. We are not just speculating. There are figures. There are accounts. There's everything that was there. Secondly, the issue that a president was removed without any reason, when he asked, what have I done? Nobody could say. It's not a sour grape. It's a reality.
And it was 9 wasted years. Huh? You speak of 9 wasted years. So in your tenure as the leader of government, there was a lot of decisions that were taken that took the country backwards. You depleted the state's coffers, and you completely obliterated the South African economy because of your corrupt activities, your proximity to people that were involved in state capture, myself included. These are the statements and then the clips, the news that goes around, the conspiracy theories from the other side that go around, because it's obviously not true from where I'm sitting. There's a certain way that the world deals with things which we can't be expected to deal with exactly how they do. I'd just like to touch upon a few points, my view and my observation on what is going on. We all have our views. As you're saying, when you look back at it, it's easier to make comment than before. But there's certain points that I stand by, even up till now. And you'd said that closing the borders is an important thing. So air travel and the actual physical borders on the ground, that is a given to stem the problem on the periphery from any of the carriers coming through, local or foreign. I think where I differ in view with some people is that there's a certain way that the world deals with things which we can't be expected to deal with exactly how they do. So I feel like a lot of the solutions we bring to the fore is firstly reactionary, and secondly is a pure copy and paste, cut and paste. So when you look at how we've attempted in sorting out our problems in South Africa, and some of the attempts have been great attempts, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash anyone and any of the solutions put on the fore, but this is the way I see and I feel about the situation. South Africa is a developing nation, third world. So certain issues that exist in South Africa do not exist in a lot of other places in the world. Maybe in Africa, but and in parts of the East and South America. But to a large degree, we have, when you touched upon this early on in this conversation, we have unique issues in South Africa. So now if we're going to deploy a complete shutdown of a system, being the country, okay, everyone stay at home, it makes sense on face value, at face value. But if you look at the ramifications, because there's no way that we wouldn't have seen the possible problems that could have occurred from a lockdown. I'm not saying the lockdown is the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying that I feel like it is quite excessive. It's an excessive thing to do at a point where there is a huge disparity between people that may have conditions that are favorable for their survival and people that don't have those conditions. So the poorest of the poor who do not have access to food and water, people that are not earning incomes, people that are now requested to sit at home, and people have been very good. They've taken the instructions very seriously, but then even in doing so, the circumstances around the environment is the issue. So now you're sitting in a squatter camp in a township where you're living on top of other people. What I'm saying is not new, but I'm just airing my views. Where social distancing is a very difficult thing to do, almost as a matter of fact, impossible to do in a lot of the poorer areas. There's no aid coming to these people as a first contact. We are sitting, waiting, and hoping to see what happens. Yes, we don't have many options, but as we're sitting and waiting, people are not earning. Starvation has been a long-standing enemy of ours in South Africa. So a complete lockdown is going to exacerbate this situation. You have plans that are put into place. There's been announcements of certain programs, and I get all of that. But I can't help but wonder to say, okay, but who are these plans benefiting? And I'm not even talking about from the financial side. That's a discussion, a whole other discussion for another day. But when it comes to the South African society, who benefits from it? Because if you look at the way things are done, there's a lockdown, there's announcements that are made, there's progress in some respects. But the number of people on empty stomachs, the number of people not being able to pay their way through life is increasing. As a matter of fact, it's even surpassed the poorest of the poor. It's now in the middle class. There's been a shrinking middle class due to the economic conditions. But now we have We have a situation where the middle class now is completely being decimated. People are not earning. So now it's gone from an issue of the poorest of the poor, who are always casualty number one, to a lot of us that are sitting in situations where we can afford, but now our businesses have been shut down. People that are working in positions where they're earning good incomes professionally, they're not earning an income. They're sitting at home. How does one come out of that? Because whenever the doors open up, whenever the economy opens up, whenever the lockdown is lifted completely, the damage has been done. So I'm mentioning this to say that I believe that a full lockdown of South Africa was a bit premature at that time, for the reasons of the outcome. The outcome was always going to be exactly where it's leading up to. We're giving people, when people are sitting, we've pushed them to a corner, and we're not giving them an opportunity to come out of it. Now we'll be surprised when people react the way that they do, but we haven't given them any other chance to do anything else. So now that speaks of an unrest that has already started in pockets. I'm not saying that it's going to lead to an unmanageable situation, but chances are it could, because people have got families to feed. We all have families to feed. We're sitting here, we are able to converse via a video call, and probably have something to eat, food on the table this evening. But how long will that last for? Because a lot of people do not have the positioning or social standing that some of us might have, even though we're feeling the pressures, because none of us are earning at this point. How does the poor, the man on the street survive? A social, civil unrest is on the cards, whether we like it or not. And how do we expect people to do something different? How do we expect people not to go and fight for their families? We don't condone violence. We don't condone activities of looting, which are illegal in our constitution. But how are we supposed to survive? And then when you look at certain announcements that are made, I feel like it's very, very counterintuitive and counterproductive. Because now, on one hand, a lot of the announcements that are made are based on stakeholder discussions. They're based on collective interests. But these collective interests have got nothing to do with the man on the street. The poorest of the poor are not sitting at that table. If you look at the lobbying that happens, you look at media media outlets that report on a lot of the big companies who've lobbied government to open up some of their economies. We've seen that in the case of the exports of wine, not an essential service. We understand that it's a contributor to the GDP. We understand that they pay their taxes, but that's not our worry right now. Because if you open up for the one exporter, what about opening it up for the next man that runs a car wash? I'm just using an example that may not make sense, but that's just an example that I'm using. What happens to us when we read about iron ore companies being given permission to continue mining? We understand coal companies, even though the coal space and the coal pricing is a whole other discussion with its own shenanigans. But I think we can understand that electricity has to be generated. Coal-fired power stations are base load at the moment, so that has to continue. It is a necessity and would be an essential service, if you ask me. But running an iron ore mine and any other mine, gold mine, diamond mine, whatever it is not essential to the needs today. But that's still happening. So now, if lobbying is happening at that level where business people can lobby and get their way, who's lobbying for the smaller business person? Who's lobbying for my uncle, my auntie, my cousin, my brother, my sister, who sells vegetables on the side of the road, who forms part of a very large informal sector? They're not being looked after. And these are the issues that concern me, because if we are favoring a certain grouping of people and ignoring another, that actually the people that we should be focusing on, that is a red alert for me. Now, taking it a bit further, you have programs put into place, and a lot of it seems to be driven online. Online meaning you need to go online, apply for coupons, apply for grants, social grants, etc. Now, most people that need to benefit from that, A, do not have data. They don't have access to data, so to physically buy that data, especially at this point. And then B, they don't have smart devices, whether it be a smartphone, it be a laptop, an iPad, a computer. These people don't have access to that sort of thing. So how do we expect them to benefit from a program that's put into place that exists in thin air? The desired outcome, we understand what the desired outcome is, and we respect that. But people are not going to reach those levels of benefit because they cannot access it. We're supposed to be promoting access, and we're not. We know things such as the military being deployed. Now, I don't understand how it works, so I'm speaking purely from the outside. But we read about these things, and we believe we have some level of understanding. So I'm not coming from a specialist perspective. This is just my view. Military is the last line of defense. They've been deployed on the streets. And it's not all streets, it's certain streets, to police people that could possibly be disrupted. I mean, it's clear to see in the areas that they've been deployed. Now you have this sort of excessive deployment that has created a mistrust between the communities and the law enforcement, not just the military, but the South African police and Metro Police in some cases, where you have communities saying, but hold on one second, why are these guys here and why are they treating us like this? Where we should be promoting a working relation between the communities and the law enforcement personnel. Now, there've been further deployments, and that messaging as well is a very touch and go messaging for people that are on the ground. Now you're deploying what should be. Yes, those are. It's been termed. What's it called? National. What's the term that is national disaster? State of national state of disaster, emergency, whatever the term is.
It's a national disaster.
Yeah, national disaster, national state of disaster. I'm not sure what the term is. But now, isn't the military supposed to be the last line of defense in a lot of cases? Now we're putting them on the ground, and we have them. Really, I mean, they're intimidating the society as it stands. So now then you have the military, you have certain pockets of looting. It's not even protesting because people are just trying to get their hands on food. And we don't condone the looting of liquor stores because that's not a basic need. But there's been those cases as well. Surely, if that persists, it's going to lead to a point where the two clash. And now we have them on the streets, and the situation is worsening. So I'm mentioning this just to say, I think we need to, like you said, we need to learn from this situation. We trust that it's under control. We trust that we're going to come out of it. But as things look, it's looking very, very bleak, and we need to really ramp up. If it were me, I would not have locked down in the sense of locking down. I would have done it partially in the places that matter, the points and ports of entry and exit. Ramp up the budgets. Just ramp up the screening and testing. Get everyone to continue practicing the preventative measures, social distancing, hand sanitizing, washing their hands, and all that sort of thing. And let everyone carry on with their lives, wear face masks, and continue. yes, limit the numbers of people that go to the workplace, limit the numbers of people that go to that travel on public transport, whatever it is. But you cannot stop it completely. Which links me back to my first point. You are stopping this completely. You're creating a whole new dynamic where everyone is going to be struggling, everyone is going to be suffering. People are not able to run their businesses. Businesses are shutting down every day. Some businesses are not going to reopen after this whole pandemic outcome. Some people are not going to be employed. Employment, some people are coming back to work, some are not coming back to work. What are we going to do then? So, the phased approach as we're doing it now, I think should have been done in the beginning, but in the inverse manner. So to start it off slowly so people can be socialized to the idea. Because in South Africa, we have a majority that lives in poverty. In South Africa, we have, like, it's not like anywhere else in the world. You have a majority that does not control the economic setup, right? So they don't determine how that goes. They're sitting there and they're looking for hope. They're looking for leadership. They're looking for a way up, and we are completely ignoring those people. And those are the people that will cause the biggest problem. Not because they want to, but we leave them no choice. We can't have a situation where we leave our people no choice. That's not an ideal situation. Can we help everybody? That's the idea. Is it a possibility? It's very difficult to do so. So I'd say no. But can we help as many people as we can? That's something that we should be doing. So who's lobbying for the poor? That's my question. And I just wanted to touch upon those points because I feel like the poor people, which, there was a number that existed pre-lockdown, and that number is definitely grown exponentially to a point where some of us that may never have believed that we'd go back to the conditions of being poverty-stricken, or some people that have never understood what poverty is about. Poverty staring them right in their faces, in their homes where they never thought they'd ever be faced with that situation. It's not a nice thing, it's not a nice feeling, but that's the reality. So as we're sitting here today, let's all understand this issue touches everybody. The issue of poverty and unemployment is not just a black issue. It's not just minimal to every other race or creed that exists in the country. Because yes, there are people that live in poverty that are not black. But what I'm saying is the numbers speak for themselves. So now we're all being absorbed into this situation where we're all looking at each other like, yo, we've got a problem. But like you said, I think it's something that we're going to learn from. Discipline you spoke about is something that we need to be very, very vigilant of right now. We need to try and remain as disciplined as possible. It is very difficult to do so. And I mean, just yourself, there's different industries that exist. Hospitality industry, dead. A lot of casual workers have formed part of that industry. Not able to support themselves, let alone their families. Entertainment industry, you know what that story is. Your own daughter, Gugu, she's got a TV show, Uzalo. I mean, that's facing a difficulty. That's one of many TV programs, shows that run on television. We forget about let's not forget about the DJs and the music artists, because this is going to persist for a while. This lockdown, we're only going to see the light possibly towards the end of this year or beginning of next year, hopefully. For that time, how do we expect people to sit at home and say, okay, I used to earn decently, if not well, in a particular industry, and now I'm asked to sit at home? And honestly speaking, there's no amount of help that can resolve that. That's just a view of mine. I'm going to touch on my last few points. The one being how the aid or relief is being put forward. Now, in my view, in my understanding, if you're going to be part of a solution, and that is providing aid, globally it's just the way it works, then you need to provide that relief. And it needs to be in the form of, because aid is a donation. It's about giving. The way that we're seeing things happen, this aid seems to be based on a loan structure. You've got people that are being offered loans at this point, as opposed to, guys, we're going to help you. This is what we have, and this is what we can help you with for free. Will it reach everybody? Of course not. There's only so much that can go around, but help the people that you can. Because there's donations that are the donations that have been put forward. And then as it goes on in the explanations and you read about it, you actually realize, no, it's actually not donations. So if you've got big money to hand it out and say, look, I'm parting with this. Once it's out of my hands, it benefits these people. And you can control where it needs to go. That's not an issue. But if you're going to create a loan structure via a company, via a fund, it just all looks suspicious. And then as it goes on in the explanations and you read about it, you actually realize, no, it's actually not donations. So if you've got big money to hand it out and say, look, I'm parting with this. Once it's out of my hands, it benefits these people. And you can control where it needs to go. That's not an issue. But if you're going to create a loan structure via a company, via a fund, it just all looks suspicious and it looks untidy. And how do we expect, to trust the situation when we're looking and saying, hey, these people are trying to put us in an interesting situation. So when it comes to the aid, it needs to be in the form of a donation as opposed to a loan structure of sorts, because that's how it's coming across. You've got people that are sitting that own businesses. They're not able to pay the rentals as tenants. You've got people that are sitting at home who are paying rentals, who are paying off home loans, car loans, vehicle loans. How those people, how does relief come to those people? Because you can't expect them to be sitting at home on one hand, and then on the other hand, the payments still have to go through. I think that's something we needed to have taken a bit more seriously, because the people really need help at this point, and help is not going to come in the form of doing fancy stuff. It's going to come in the form of keeping it very simple. You've got a military on the ground. Get food parcels to them. Let them distribute it to avoid issues of people pulling it and benefiting and profiting off. If we're trying to get a hold of more food, we've got companies out there that I'm sure would love to help in this time. I mean, they've made wonderful profits over the years. Some of them have been found guilty of price fixing and collusion. Maybe right now they'd like to showcase that they actually clean companies and mean well for the communities. So companies that are in the bread business, the flour business, the maize mealie meal business, the sugar business, whichever companies, to say, look, at this point we understand there's an issue. We'll produce. We'll keep our stuff running. So you have these situations where the benefit is not reaching everybody, and the benefit needs to reach everybody. So, like I was saying, you get those companies that have been found wanting by the Competition Commission. I'm sure they'd love to contribute at this time of need for the people to say, you know what, we'll continue employing our people. We'll work around the clock, 2 shifts or 3 shifts, 24-hour shifts. We'll produce whatever we need to produce, flour, mealie meal, bread, whatever it is, and get the army personnel to pick up these food items and distribute it to the very same communities that they are policing. I think that would be, it's a simple way of looking at it. It's the way, it's not rocket science. This has happened in many other places in the world. And at least that will create some sort of level of trust between the communities and the law enforcement agencies, instead of what we're seeing where there's almost an antagonizing rift that keeps getting bigger. So those are just, we live by ideas. Hopefully our ideas are heard. We hope that the right thing gets done. We trust that the right thing will get done. But that time of completely ignoring the people that need the help, the desperate people that need the help, that time is gone. I think we see the situation for what it is, and unfortunately for the time which is now, the middle class is becoming part of that poverty-stricken population, and that's a dangerous part. So people that may not have seen what some of us have said for years will be seeing it now, because it is a real thing. The majority is becoming the poverty-stricken majority is on the rise, and we need to stem that right now when we can. And then my final point on that is, from a healthcare perspective, the testing to see who's carrying, who's a carrier, who's not a carrier, who's infected, the infection rate, and that sort of thing needs to continue. We all expected it to be far worse than it is now. Maybe we're not being told that it is, but from what we see and then what we hear, because we live by communication. There's certain rumblings that happen. There's certain whisperings that happen to say, look, we expected this to be a whole lot worse than we thought it was. There's some people that have said that in the townships, in some of the squatter camps, expected it to have already run like wildfire. Now, I don't know if it has or it hasn't. I don't have access to this information. But some of the doctors have said that, fortunately for some of the immunization or inoculations that we have at a young age, that's helped a lot of the squatter camp and the squatter and the township community survive this pandemic. There's a certain level of immunity that's been created because of the exposure of generally the less fortunate in South Africa, the exposure to viruses and how it's built up the immune system. True or not, this is something we'll find out, but this is what I'm being told as I speak to people on the ground. So we keep an eye on it, and we not only hope for the best, we will come out of it. I'm positive that COVID-19 we will surpass. I think that is something that we'll get over head and shoulders past this situation. The issue is the ramifications post COVID-19, the issues that will be presented with the unemployment and more especially the starvation, which have been our issues. And part of the triple threat that you politicians always speak about: unemployment, inequality, and poverty. It's only going to get worse if we do not deal with this realistically and favorably to the people that are not favored by the conditions. And that's my thought on the current lockdown.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to hear your thinking as well. I think your thinking touches the systems, because it is the systems that divided the world west and east, and the systems will never change. I mean, those who have it now, they might look good because they're giving something. It's just a bit, nothing else. But I hear you. This has been the first experience, and I think with all the apparent shortcomings, whatever, but I think nevertheless people have tried.
That's true.
Next time it will be much better, but it is true that it's a very loaded dice for poor people, as always. They're always behind and etc. I think people will realize the kind of things that what could have done it better, etc. And I think in another pandemic during this generation, we'll be better prepared, I think.
Sure.
I hope so. But it's important for people to make observations and make because the critical point is, why do we still have people who live in the squatter camps? I made the point, as we were discussing earlier, that only one country so far that come from the developing world, China, has had a very direct impact to squatter camps and poor people, etc. Because the system they're using, the discipline they have, the care they have about the people is not just lip service, it is real. But those are issues for another time we could talk about. But thank you very much. I'm happy to hear your ideas, your thinking and everything. And I'm more happier now than I have been that you think about the problems of the poor people. Well, that's a critical point. No matter what happens, if we're not able to deal with the problems of the people, then we remain with the problem perpetually.